Secretary of State Antony Blinken landed in Israel yesterday on a previously scheduled tour that was kind of dealt a curveball due to the recent wave of violence in the region. Now, this occurs at a time when the newly reminted Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has retaken the reins of government. He's like the Energizer Bunny, he just keeps on going. And he's working to establish a relationship with the Biden administration. But with some of the things the Biden administration is pushing, I think it's going to be a little difficult. Joining us now with a report on all the latest news from the Middle East is CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell. Chris, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Great to be with you, Tony.
Good to see you as always. Let me ask you this. With the recent violence in Israel, what is the mood, generally speaking, in the country?
Well, I think it's kind of somber right now, Tony. You know, sometimes Israel's like a big family. So many people know somebody that was killed in a terror attack or wounded. We were there in a place called Neve Yaakov on Sunday to do a stand-up and a report on what happened last Friday. That's when 7 Israeli Jews were killed by a Palestinian gunman. Tragically, even one couple that was part of those 7 that were killed, they heard the shots and they went out to see if they could help. And they ran into the gunman and he killed them. We talked to a man named Avraham Levy. He's actually a teacher at the synagogue. And we asked him what he felt. And he just said, our hearts are heavy because of what happened. And he mentioned one of the people that went down to help people and then he lost his life. So I think a fairly somber idea of what's happening here because of these terror attacks, not only Friday night, but then Saturday at the city of David by a 13-year-old Palestinian boy.
Now, many thought that those incidents would kind of change Secretary Blinken's message when he came there to Jerusalem and to Israel, but it doesn't seem like it did. He once again called for a two-state solution. Many thought he might, given the backdrop of this violence, not go there, but he did.
Yeah, he did. He did when he was talking to at a press conference with Benjamin Netanyahu, and did call for another two-state solution. And I'm sure he brought that up when he went to Ramallah to meet with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. I think a lot of Israelis have moved on from a two-state solution, given the fact that they don't feel like there's a real legitimate peace partner on the other side. In fact, after the massacre, as some people are calling it, on Friday night, there were celebrations in Jenin, in Nablus, here in the eastern part of Jerusalem, in Gaza. And they were having fireworks. They were passing out candies. And a lot of people wonder here, is this the kind of state that we want here, living, quote, side by side in peace and security with Israel? So I think Tony Blinken and the State Department may be going that way, but I think a lot of Israelis have moved on, feeling maybe we can manage the situation, but not necessarily make what some would say a terrorist state. It reminds me of what former U.S. Ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, said. You know, the definition of insanity is doing something over and over and expecting different results. In the State Department, they call that diplomacy.
Well, I haven't been to Israel since COVID, so I've not been back over, hope to get over soon. But in my conversations and when I was making trips over into the eastern part of Israel, what some call the West Bank, the Palestinian Authority was inciting a lot of this violence among young people. When you look at this young kid who went after and began shooting, trying to kill Jewish people, you have to ask the question, what's behind that? Has the Palestinian Authority, has it reformed, or is it still pushing and inciting this type of violence?
I think it's still inciting, Tony. In fact, we talked to Itamar Marcus. He's the director of the Palestinian Media Watch. We talked to him last night. He just came out recently with a book called Teaching Terror to Tots. And what the Fatah party, part of the Palestinian Authority, does is they have a small publication or publication to small children from ages 6 to 15. And in that book, it chronicles how many are encouraged to be shaheeds or martyrs, that the Jewish people have no right to the land. They're usurping it from the Palestinian people. So this is indoctrinating a generation. And I asked him what would change the situation. He says, well, Israel can't change it, but the international community could. For example, the European Union and especially the United States, with the Biden administration, is putting in maybe $200 to $300 million into the Palestinian Authority. They do have leverage, financial leverage. There are, rhetoric going back and forth that we're going to reform, we're going to change, but it doesn't seem to make a difference. So it would have to be, I think, the international community and the United States in particular to try to make a difference and stop this kind of incitement, which really perpetuates this Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Well, I don't foresee that happening anytime soon when you have the Biden administration kind of acting hesitant to work with the Netanyahu-led government, saying they're too right-wing.
Yeah, exactly. That was probably another thing on the agenda for Antony Blinken today, was warning about this judicial reform that they're talking about, and maybe some other policies in Judea and Samaria, known as the West Bank. So he did come, I think, with an agenda about concerns about what's really probably the most right-wing government in Israel's history.
Yeah, well, I wish we could have one of those too. Final question for you. We got about 30 seconds, but I always like to ask you whenever we get a chance to talk with you on the program, how can we be praying for the people of Israel here in the United States?
Well, certainly pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray that these terror attacks would be restrained, that people here would be safe, that wisdom for the leaders here in the land, how to respond to these. They have taken some punitive measures after the terror attack on Friday and Saturday. Great wisdom, and I think on the other side that there would be perhaps a change of heart, where there could be a genuine peace plan of hearts and minds of Palestinians and Israelis. So I think that would be some of the things that I think would be really important for people to be praying for.
And it's biblical. We need to be praying for the peace of Jerusalem. Chris Mitchell, always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Great to be with you, Tony.